Close your eyes and let your breath fall into a steady, slow rhythm. Imagine the soft hush of a city evening just before night wraps the rooftops in a cool blanket. In that hush, imagine a long shelf of open books, one of them well-loved and turned down at the spine, holding stories that have wandered across centuries and seas. Tonight, we will settle into one of those worn pages and follow the gentle light of a tale that starts in bright, simple places. A palace, a perfumed garden, a little boy and girl who loved roses, and then wanders outward and inward across frost and song, laughter and hush. Our story moves smoothly like warm milk poured into a tall cup. We will watch it settle, feel its warmth, and sink with it into sleep. There was once an emperor who adored new clothes the way stars adore night. He loved them so much he kept wardrobes for every hour of the day, and a different suit for each immediate moment. If anyone asked where he was, people didn't say, "He's sitting in council," as they might of other rulers. They said, "The emperor sits in his wardrobe," because it was where he shone and where he felt most himself. But this is the story of how being seen and being unseen can bend what people say about one another. Like a breeze lifting the corner of a curtain to show a shadow that looks like a person, or like sunlight making threads glitter that were always there but unnoticed. One morning, two strangers came to court, calling themselves weavers. They promised fabrics of such rare beauty that they claimed the cloth would be invisible to anyone who was either unfit for their office or dreadfully foolish. Just imagine the emperor's eyes when he heard that, not harsh or cruel, only hungry like a child who has discovered a secret box of sweets. He imagined, if a cloth could show who was wise and who was foolish, then he could see clearly who served him well. He ordered the very best silk and the finest gold thread, paid the weavers handsomely, and withheld just the smallest measure of suspicion. The weavers set up empty looms and pretended to work. Day after day, they pointed to the air where no fabric existed and spoke of colors and patterns that were not there at all. No one dared to admit they could not see the cloth, for if they couldn't see it, they must either be foolish or unfit for their job. So people smiled and praised and painted words on empty space. They said, "What a splendid cloth," as if the praising might make the cloth appear. When the emperor himself went to inspect the fabric, he could see nothing. He could have remained honest with himself and said so, but to say so would have been to risk calling himself unfit, and vanity has a way of sounding like prudence. He therefore praised the invisible cloth, and the weavers were rewarded and cheered. In the last hours before the triumphal procession, the rogues sewed nothing with needles without thread, cut nothing but the air with their scissors, and pretended to pass a suit over the emperor as he turned before the mirror. The courtiers, the officers of the crown, the town, all spoke the same words: magnificent, charming, excellent. But among the murmurs and the grand parade, a child with the particular softness of innocence spoke plainly. He said, "But the emperor has nothing on." You can hear how the sentence falls like cool water onto a warm hand, and it seized the people around him like a slow surprise. They gazed. The emperor flushed, proud even when embarrassed, and the procession that could not be stopped went on. The lords of the bedchamber grasped what was not there and held up a train no one else could see, knowing that in a moment truth and laughter might tumble together like marbles from a child's pocket. That little child's simple observation warmed the air like a candle lit after long darkness. The truth slipped between the layers of pretense. And finally, everyone allowed the quiet miracle of honesty to be felt. This tale begins, and most of the others that follow begin, with a quiet truth too. The world is full of people who want to be seen in a certain light, and it is full of people who long to be loved for things that cannot be seen. We will continue with stories that carry the same gentle thread. Things shown and things hidden. Children who know more than grown folk expect. Small, brave people and strange, momentary magics that turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. There was once a prince who wanted to marry a princess, but she had to be a real princess. He traveled, as princes do, and found many ladies with titles and trim gowns, but none matched what his heart called a real princess. In the garden where his father lay buried grew a rose tree that blossomed, but once every 5 years, and then bore a single rose so fragrant it could quiet sorrow and summon joy. He had a nightingale too, one of those birds whose song seems to carry rainbows. He sent both the rose and the bird to an emperor's daughter as a gift that might sway her heart. She clapped her hands at seeing the gilded boxes, but she did not love the live things inside. She wanted things that were made and perfect and proper. The prince loved her so much he could only disguise himself to work as a swineherd in the palace, creating little wonders. A kettle drum that played a tune when it boiled, bells that chimed every dish cooking in the city, and a rattle that played waltzes and jigs like rainbows in motion. The princess, who thought she knew what was tasteful, teased and bartered, gave kisses for trinkets, and in the end, the prince revealed himself in his true splendor. He found she cherished the wrong things, and as she had failed to prize the honest gifts of rose and song, he departed. The story is soft and sharp together. Tender invention is often worth the world, but some hearts cling to shine rather than to wonder. Another prince traveled far to find a real princess. He returned sad and empty-handed until a storm shook the castle and a young woman knocked. Wet and trembling, she said she was a real princess. The wise queen mother placed 3 tiny peas on the bed 20 mattresses with 20 feather beds stacked on top, and left the princess there. In the morning, the princess said she had barely slept, that something hard pressed her skin. Only a true princess could have felt such a small measure through such a towering bed. The prince took her to his heart. She was his bride. That little test of tenderness helped him choose one who could notice what narrowly matters. Small things are often the truest measures of the heart. A different story tells of shoes with astonishing powers. The galoshes of fortune carried the wearer wherever he longed in the world, instantly, as if stream and road dissolved into a single step. Such shoes fell into the hands of many, and each tale that spins from them is not merely about distance, but about the longing inside a heart. A watchman puts them on, becomes a lieutenant in a parlor, and dreams moonlit voyages. A copyist wears them, feels the sudden winged impulse of poetry, becomes a bird to escape his desk, and then finds himself in a cage. The shoes grant wishes, but do not spare the wearer consequences. They mirror what the heart already carries. Their moral is quiet and kind. A wish without ground can become a wandering that scatters the self as wind scatters leaves. If you listen to these stories quietly, they will seem less like lectures and more like doors opening to soft rooms. The fir tree, for instance, lives his life impatiently, wanting to be tall, to be noticed, to be more magnificent than a small, fresh life allows. When he is finally cut down and put in the warm, brilliant room on Christmas Eve, he feels flattered and nervous and proud. He trembles when the candles catch. The children dance and take the decorations away. And afterward, when the tree is tossed into the loft and forgotten, it is only then that it knows how much of living is to be present in the green moment. That regret is gentle. It teaches us to be kind to our present green hours, not merely to the gold-starred versions we project into the future. And then there is a story like a long white thread through the night, the Snow Queen. It begins with a sprite and a mirror that did not simply show things as they were, but twisted the world, making the fair appear mean and the mean appear monstrous. That mirror was broken, and its splinters were scattered. Some lodged in eyes and hearts, and those who caught a splinter began to see the world sharpened to cruelty or distortion. Some had ice enter their heart. A little boy and a little girl lived in neighboring garret windows, with a narrow thread of garden between them. Kay and Gerda were friends in the truest way children can be, small ministers of miracle to one another. Then Kay, struck by the sharp little glass of the bad mirror, took a splinter in his eye and another in his heart, and went away with the Snow Queen, wrapped in the bright but cold company of winter. He forgot the warmth of roses and the songs of the nightingale, and found himself in a palace of living ice where beauty was measured like geometry, hard and pure and bereft of mercy. Gerda, who loved him simply, did not stop. She set on a journey across rivers and forests, through odd houses where strange ladies practiced witchcraft on flowers, through a robber maiden's rough affection, and across the white distances of Lapland, where reindeer know the paths of longing. Gerda's hope was small and sturdy, like a breadcrumbs. She did not plan to win. She merely held the memory of the child she loved. Along that white way, she met a kind woman who wrote words on a fish skin so that a Finland woman might read them. She met a reindeer who kissed her, and where the snow blew in neat armies, the angels of prayer strung their lances like lanterns. In the Snow Queen's great hall, which glimmered like a cathedral of frozen light, Kay puzzled with ice pieces and tried to make a figure that would mean eternity, and the splinters in him made his understanding narrow and proud. But the return of warmth and tears, Gerda's hot, persistent, honest tears, thawed him deeply and made him see once more. The Snow Queen could not keep what was living and loved. The splinter rolled from Kay's eye, and his heart, unknit as a knot might give way to a patient hand. They went home together. The frost melted. The spring arrived. Sometimes the longest journeys end by walking back to the green roof where roses grow. This tale carries an enormous tenderness. It reminds us that sometimes the strongest magic is a child's refusal to let go. When you listen to stories like these, their edges soften. They are not meant to rouse you to panic, but to invite you toward a restful understanding. People often wear masks or are fooled by what others praise or hide. But there are small, brave hearts who speak truth and act with love. The old things remain. An emperor who sits in his wardrobe, a prince who loves a nightingale, a princess who proves her compassion by a pea under mattresses, a mother who follows death into a greenhouse of living things to find her child. Some of the tales end happily, others with sorrow, but all are full of the small luminous things, a scrap of cloth, a single rose, a match struck in the dark that can change someone's life. There's a scene now in a tiny house near a river where a child has frozen in the cold of a last winter night. She is a match seller girl whose little bundle went unsold. She lights each match to feel warm for a single tender moment, and by those sparks sees a beautiful vision. A warm stove, a roast goose stepping from the platter, a glorious Christmas tree, then the luminous figure of her grandmother, kind and shining. When the matches are gone, she has no more warmth in the bitter air. In the dawn, her frozen body is found, and the people stop long enough to say, "She tried to warm herself," as if that tiny, true attempt could somehow explain the visions she saw. The story stops short there for many listeners, but inside it glows with the unspoken truth that a moment of love, even when it can't be kept, may feed the soul either toward heaven or to a human kindness left for others to notice. The little girl's vision, the light inside the matches, was as real and as private as a prayer offered while the world is asleep. The tender lesson is not that sorrow must be valued because it is painful, but that the loveliest things can burn briefly and save us as only love can. The books line up, each small spine a lane of breath. One tale speaks of an old man living alone in an ancient house full of portraits and faded leather, and a pewter soldier placed in his window by a little boy who wanted to banish loneliness with a gift. The little soldier leaps to the floor one night, driven by a brave notion of adventure, and falls through the cracks of a timbered floor where it sleeps decades like a coin buried in earth, until a young wife and a garden touch the soil again and discover the soldier, as if uncovering a small, sentient time capsule. He remembers the warmth of being given. The house is gone, but he is found and polished again. A soft truth is there. Objects hold stories exactly as people do. If we listen, we can revive the good. Another tale speaks of the elderbush and the slender, laughing woman who sits within it, called Nanny or the Dryad, who is really remembrance. She watches a pair of old lovers recall their life and yields to them a crown of golden flowers for their years. In her blossom are the sweet aromas of 1,000 mornings, the horse, the round tower, the haycocks and moonlit meadows. She holds time in her petals like a small treasury of gentle days. Stories like this are a balm. They remind the listener how each ordinary life is threaded with memory, like a necklace of tiny lights. We pass now to quieter corners where the smallest creatures carry grand stories. A pair of white snails in a burdock grove tell us about ancestral hopes of being boiled and shown on silver dishes, an image at once absurd and touching. They dream themselves as important, and in their slow way they are. The world likes to unroll its importance in different forms. An elderbush that grows from a teapot turns night into a leafy midsummer bower in which children ride on the spoon's handle, and memories are crowned in gold. And yet, not every story ends easily. A mother once gave up her hair to an old woman in the hopes of finding a child in death's garden of living flowers. She stood and begged and threatened the cold man himself. But when the flower that was her child's future was shown to her, she let it be, because that flower held a fate she could not remake. She watched each possible life like a lantern-bearing pilgrim and wept. Her grief became a wise restraint. To hold life sacred is to know that some things we ask for simply are not for keeping. One of the most tender, odd stories whispers in slow cadence about a collar, a false collar, that thinks itself a gentleman, boasting of its boot jack and hair comb, and its many admirers, until it is torn into rags that become white paper. Even the paper speaks in the end. Remember that pride makes us paper thin. The The caller's loudness becomes the tale printed on itself. It is a soft joke and a kind warning. The shadow is a far gentler, curiouser piece. A learned man in a warm country believes he has lost his shadow. The shadow goes away, grows into a man, earns chains of seals and a world of perfumed pleasures. The man, meanwhile, who has been learned and earnest, grows poorer in worldly favor, yet richer in truth. In letters and soft lantern light, the shadow returns with a flourish and offers to lead. The shadow becomes the master, and the man becomes what the shadow once was. The tale nudges at the idea that unless we are careful, what we hope to be, what we wear, and what claims us may become us, and we may lose the kind and steady thing that was at our heart. But even this tale is gentle. It forgives the folly of mistaking ranks and teaches that honesty itself is a light better than any bright ribbon. Finally, there is the story of a young child, Tuck, whose geography lessons are meant to root him in the world, but whose heart and yearning lift him into vivid dreams where kings rise from fountains, and where the entire landscape seems to bend into a single, luminous pageant. Tuck helps the washerwoman and wakes to find that his lesson sits taut, as if kindness had taught him everything. It is a small miracle, gentle and quiet. Little by little, the pages close around their threads. The emperor walks with the knowledge that a child's voice can unmask a throne. The prince learns that a nightingale's song and a single rose are truer gifts than gilded trinkets. The girl who loved Kay keeps walking until frost and distance cannot block a small flame. The fir tree surrenders its wish to a lesson of presence. The mother who followed death knows at last that choosing love for a child is not always choosing what the heart demands, but what the world needs. The little match girl finds a final warmth in a vision of love the world thought no one would see. The soldier who fell from drawers is found and polished in new hands. Remembrance, in her elder bush, crowns the old. The false collar is folded into paper and tells its own story. And the shadow finds that becoming human requires more than glossy rings and clever words. It needs a heart that remembers and keeps what is true. Now take a long, slow breath and imagine all this as a soft lantern placed on a windowsill on a cold night. Its light is not loud. It does not blast or demand. It is steady. It warms a small area and calls out the friends that matter. The old wardrobe opens later. The emperor learns how thin the cloth once was. But the true lesson is gentleness. To admire someone is not wrong if admiration melts into honest kindness. To be tempted by beauty is fair as long as beauty is not all we use to measure worth. We close with this gentle image: a little girl, hands warmed by a match, and then warmed forever by the love she kept in her heart. a boy returned to the sight of roses, a prince who understood the worth of a single song, an old married pair crowned by memory, the shadow that learned humility. We end with the hush of the library, with books folded like sleepers, their whispers held in place like breathing. Listen now to your breath, held here in the hush like the pause between pages. Feel how tranquil the world becomes when we let truth and tenderness rule our thoughts as the moon rules the tide. Let the images of roses, warm stoves, snow-cradled journeys, and golden crowns drift slowly across your inner sky. Each tale you heard tonight is a small lantern, and now one by one they are put carefully down on the bedside table of your thought. The room is quiet. The air is gentle. Sleep will gather you like a soft cloak. Tomorrow, you will wake ready to find small, honest joys. Rest now and let the stories keep watch until your dreams gather their own bright threads. Good night.